how the mural, Chicana had received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts when they had one that, they gave artists, individual artists as well as groups or organizations money to do a variety of things. And so they had applied and they got this grant to give money to a group of artists to do murals in a public project, housing project. Mm-hmm. And the one they chose was the one in Ramona Gardens, which was in an interesting place because it was on the border between two of the major gangs at the time in Boyle Heights, which was Clover and Hazard. And so that proved to be, one of the things that this project was intended to try and intercede in and keep things calm. And it did to a degree, but there were, I forget how many artists they were. There must have been about a dozen artists who were picked to do murals. Carlos Almaraz and I both got picked to do murals, and we decided together. We had been classmates at Otis Art Institute just a few years prior, and we decided to do women empowerment murals, which were very unusual at the time. I don't know if there were any or if there were just a couple. I don't remember seeing others, but we decided to do very specific and blatant murals that were about women and not the usual imagery you saw of women in murals in those days. There were Aztec princesses who were draped over a muscular, handsome Aztec warrior. And we just thought that it needed to be upgraded to something that was realistic and showed respect and thanks for the contributions of women since the time of the pre-Columbian era. And that's how we got the job. And Carlos, I think Carlos made the connection with Joe Rodriguez, who was then the director. He followed Leonard Castellanos, who had been the founder and director of Mexicano, who left Los Angeles, and Joe inherited the job. And there were some very, important artists who did work at the time. Guys like the Los Streetscapers, they were probably the most experienced. Wayne Healy and David Boteo. And then there was Willie Aron, who was probably the best mural painter East LA ever produced. Those were the standouts. I mean, their murals were spectacular, and it was fun to be around. Guys who were already so experienced and done these really wonderful murals for the community. And I know the community certainly enjoyed watching them go up, and was very they were very grateful for the work, and being able to see it every day was before I restored my mural in 2016. 40 years had passed, and I think it was the taggers who hit the murals that had lasted that long were not so much trying to destroy them, but it was just an opportunity. I mean, they had looked at them forever. They were getting old and ugly and faded, and it was just an opportunity to use the wall. And then, of course, the city of Los Angeles came in, who considered the tagging a crime, and they came in and they rolled over in some cases only half the mural with paint to cover where the tagging was, but left some part of the mural still exposed. My mural survived, I think, fairly unscathed. There was very little, there was almost no tagging. that was visible. There were some shadows of maybe something at the very edges of the work that probably the people who lived there, the residents of Ramona Gardens, painted out, because that particular mural was about mothers, grandmothers, daughters, women from the beginning of the great cultures of Mexico to the present, to Cesar Chavez and the revolution of 1910, all things that the kids in that particular neighborhood knew about. They were probably either, if they weren't immigrants, they were first generation Mexicanos, and all of that history was something they had heard discussed in their families, or even had grandparents at that point who had been part of or been children in Mexico during some of those times. So they had an emotional sense of responsibility for keeping it look as well as it could under years of sun and rain and what else, but it was very touching to go and see it. It was very faded when we first saw it in 2016 and 2015. And then I got a grant from the Department of Cultural Affairs here in Los Angeles to do a renovation of the mural the next year, and formed a team of all women painters, one of whom was the very famous Blossom, who is probably one of the best female muralists in Los Angeles. We did it in about a week and brought it back to its original, color and, clarity. And people were so excited and so happy to see it again. And people came from, who had lived there as children and saw it then and came back and, said how grateful they were to see it restored. And it was a wonderful experience to see a piece of art that mainstream America would have thought should be painted out. These people were grateful that it had been repainted and restored.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this should be good.